Man, what is this place? There's literally nothing around us. We can't really do anything if it's water all around us. There does seem to be some high ground in the distance. Let's try to swim out there and check it out. Wait, what? It just disappeared. It seems it was just a mirage. But the ground is definitely higher out here. Maybe we can even stand somewhere.
We found a little high ground that we can stand on. And you know what that means? We can try our luck at some fishing. I took out the fishing rod and started fishing. And shortly after I caught the first fish, a beautiful trout worth $100, thrown the bait back into the sea. But the sea started trolling me, as the next catch was an old, rusty car wheel. Caught a small salmon worth $100. Then, a ball, or whatever this thing is, caught so much trash that after some time the government paid us $1,000 for it. Spent the whole day just fishing, and increased our bank balance to just over $3,000. But we need to make a shelter before the night comes. I opened up the catalog and started lifting all the ground around us. It cost about $1,000 to make this cozy little island. Spent another $495 on a tent to sleep in, $800 on a couple of basic greenhouses. We got plenty of water around us, and that's the only thing the greenhouses need. It will produce a ton of vegetables ranging from chili peppers, garlic to tomatoes, or even strawberries. I opened all the side panels to let some fresh air in as it's very hot right now. After all that splurging, we got just $707 left in the bank account, which means back to fishing. As a first catch, we caught this massive trout worth $400, spent the whole night out there, and grown the bank balance to $4,396. We should expand our island a little bit. We need to make some space so we could buy some machinery. I opened the catalog and started raising all the ground around the island. Spent all of our money to make this weird-shaped island. So I picked up the fishing rod and went back to fishing.
Okay, we got $900. How much are the cheapest tractors anyways? Let's see. Over $10,000 for the cheapest ones? Seriously? All we can afford are these simple hand tools.
I spent $200 on a pushable plow, $320 on a pushable seeder, and $315 on some seeds. Picked up the hand plow and started turning all the soil over. Then loaded in the seeds into the seeder and planted it all with wheat. I have no idea how we will harvest it, but that's a problem for the future me. But it was getting dark, so I parked the seeder and went inside to get some rest.
Oh, wow. The crops grew so much in just a single month. It would probably be smart to put some fertilizer and lime over it to increase the yield. Let's just close these for the winter.
But to spray lime and fertilizer, we need a spreader. I opened the shop and the cheapest one is this one for $530. But we also need a tractor. The cheapest one is this Steer T80 with unknown horsepower and max speed of 15 kilometers per hour, coming at $4,000. But all this work can wait till some warmer times. I ran back to my tent, put on some warmer clothes, and began my winter fishing session as there was nothing else to do on the island during the winter. Caught a whole lot of fish, like this gigantic salmon worth $400 on its own, or this beautiful trout that sold for just $100. Spent the whole winter fishing on the island, and netted just over $11,000 in our bank account. I changed up my clothes to something more relaxing, opened up the greenhouses. And to my surprise, they finally produced some products. We got some garlic, chili, strawberries, and even some tomatoes. But to sell it, we first need to build a port. I opened up the sculpting and started expanding our island a little bit. Spent around $1,000 on this little addition, and another $1,000 on the selling station itself. But now we need a way to transport all those pallets to the selling point. As the pallets weigh around 400 kilograms each, I first checked the front loader, but the cheapest one was over $57,000. Telehandlers and wheel loaders were even more expensive, easily going over the $100,000 mark. We couldn't even afford the cheapest skid steer, as that cost $12,000 plus a few grand for the pallet fork. But I found this beautifully designed forklift. It is using simple stones to counterbalance the weight, and it cost us just $200. I mounted it, and everything seemed to work just fine. But driving it on some loose sand was a bad idea, as it immediately got stuck. I moved it out of the way, and spent a few $100s to pour some gravel around the yard. Then I picked up a pallet of tomatoes, and got over $2,000 for it alone. Not a bad profit if you ask me. Sold off all 8 pallets of the vegetables, and got our balance to over $24,000. which might seem like a lot of money, but we got a whole lot of equipment we need to buy. I parked the forklift and began shopping. First, spent $4,820 on a Steyr T80 tractor, $580 on fertilizer spreader, $1,030 on a very basic and primitive seeder, $550 on a plow, and about $1,000 on some seeds and fertilizer. All in all, we spent around $8,000 of our hard-earned dollars.
Damn, this thing is nicer than I thought. We can even put our future chainsaw on it. Seems to be driving all right, too. It will surely speed up all the work we need to do around the farm.
I attached the fertilizer spreader, loaded in the fertilizer. But before we can spray it, we need to move all the new equipment out of the field. So I detached the spreader, expanded the island a little bit around the camp, and spent $2,000 on this tiny shed made out of scrap wood. First, moved all the hand tools under the roof, then all the newly purchased machinery, reattached the fertilizer spreader, and gave the crops some solid fertilizer to help them grow. Parked the tractor under the roof, and began spending the rest of our money. First, expanded the island. Spent about $8,000 on this massive expansion. In just a few months, we will have a huge wheat harvest. So I spent another $4,000 on a couple of chicken coops, and spent the rest of the money on some more greenhouses. Build 6 new ones. I opened up all the sides. In about a year from now, we will have a huge harvest of tomatoes and other vegetables, but we still have this huge empty area on the island. So I built some nice gravel pathways around all the greenhouses, then hopped back into our lovely tractor, attached the plow, and began making some new fields. Took me the whole day, but made 2 new fields, one near the chicken coops and one right next to greenhouses. But it was getting dark, so I parked the tractor in the shed and went inside to get some sleep. The next morning, the whole island was surrounded by a massive mist, but we have plenty of jobs to do for today. First, I hopped into the tractor, attached the fertilizer spreader again, sprayed both fields with fertilizer. But we also need to spray some lime, and unfortunately we got minus $259 to our name. So I took my fishing rod and went out fishing. The first catch was a beautiful old bucket, but just a short while later, I caught this gigantic salmon worth $400, and right after got an impressive salmon that sold for $200. In just a short while, we got our balance to $528. That was enough to buy ourselves a few bags of lime, loaded the lime into the spreader, and spread it onto the new fields. Now we only need to plant all the fields. So I attached the seeder, loaded in some seeds, and planted the fields with oats, as that's the only thing we can plant at this time. Parked the tractor in the shed and remembered something.
Man, in just a couple of months, all this wheat will be ready for harvest. And all we got is $83 to our name. How will we harvest it all?
I quickly opened the catalog and spent $40 on a nice fishing chair, and began the hardcore fishing session to afford a harvester before the crops are ready. Made over $18,000 in the 3 months I spent fishing. A huge chunk of it comes from the $5,000 reward we got for collecting trash out of the ocean. So I opened the catalog and started shopping for a combine harvester. But the cheapest one is this Bison Z040 that is for sale for just $19,000 plus a few thousand for the header. The only thing we could afford was this hand-pushable harvester for $1,520, and spent another $1,300 on a trailer, moved the trailer out of the field, and began the harvest. It will take a while to harvest it all, that's for sure, and we got a rain forecast in a few hours. It took a few hours to harvest it all, but managed to get almost a full trailer full of wheat, 1,925 liters to be precise, parked the harvester, and ran off to buy some chicken. Bought 30 chickens in each coop for $50 per chicken. Filled up the first coop with feed, but ran into a problem.
Ah, okay. There's no way we can squeeze in this gap to feed the chickens in the second coop. What to do? I know. I've seen this bagging station for sale a while ago. Maybe they still sell it.
I've spent $50 on a bagger, loaded in all the wheat, and in just a few moments had a whole bunch of bags filled with wheat. Used up most of it to feed the chicken, but we still had a few left. Spent $4,000 on a new shed to store all the bags from rain, moved all the bags under the roof, and hopped back into the tractor, But we have a new problem. What to do with all this straw? Opened the catalog and spent $170 on a hand-pushable windrower and $500 on a baler. First windrowed all the straw and made into some small bales. Made exactly 13 bales. Parked the baler in the shed, hopped into the tractor, and loaded all the bales into the trailer. Sold it all off for just $1,508. We can finally adjust the field areas on our farm. First, I poured some gravel on the delivery spot of the island. Also poured some gravel around the shed and tents. And began expanding the island a little bit. Spent around $3,000 on this little expansion. And $2,500 on a second shed. But it started raining and I was tired after pushing the harvester around for half of the day and went inside the tent to get some rest. But the next morning we had to do it all over again as oats were ready to harvest. I took the harvester from the shed and started the harvest. But the yield wasn't very good. As from both fields, we didn't even fill the harvester. Just 964 liters of oat. I just immediately sold it and got $1,706 for it. Parked the harvester in the shed. But now we need to fix all these fields. I hopped into the tractor, attached the plow, and started combining them all. After a full day of work, I managed to make this massive new field. Parked the plow, and went inside to get some rest. The next morning, as a first measure, I went off to check up on the chicken. They still have plenty of food, and produce 234 pieces of eggs per coop. I decided to sell it off the eggs to see how much we can earn. Picked up both of the pallets with the forklift. Got over $1,000 per pallet. I put the forklift back in the shed and went off to check the greenhouses. They have almost 900 liters of vegetables each. In just a month, we will probably have enough to fill up the pallets. But first, we need to plant some wheat again. I hopped into the tractor, attached the fertilizer spreader, spread some fertilizer, and planted all the fields with wheat. But didn't have much to do after that, so I picked up the fishing chair and went off fishing. But didn't catch much, just this rusty bucket and a few small trout. The next day, we got a massive job on our hands as the greenhouses produced some vegetables again. But first, we need to buy a flatbed trailer to speed up the selling process. I bought this beautiful blue self-made trailer for just $2,500, attached it to the tractor, and started loading all the pallets onto it. Sold off the first load for $15,548. Second for another $17,681. And the last one for $16,680. All in all, made over $52,000 from all the greenhouses. We can finally build a house for ourselves. As a first measure, I decided to expand the island a bit again. Spent almost $30,000 to make this huge new addition to the island. Demolished the tents, demolished the old sheds, spent $12,000 on a new polished-style house, 2 new sheds for $4,000 each, and about $1,000 on some gravel and grass. The island is finally starting to look more like an actually livable space. We do have quite a bit of new land. Might even be able to plant some grass before the winter comes. I attached the plow and started turning some soil over to make new fields. Made 2 new fields, planted one with grass, and left the other one plowed for planting in the autumn. The only thing we got left to do before the winter, feed the animals. I ran to the chicken coops and filled up the feeding pans to the brink. Used up absolutely all the wheat we got. Hopefully it lasts us through the winter. There was absolutely nothing left to do for us, so I went inside to get some rest through the winter. By the time I came outside, it was the middle of April, and as a first measure, I went to check up on the chicken. They produced a ton of eggs, and as a food, they got 3 liters and 63 liters respectively. The greenhouses produced a few pallets of vegetables as well. So I hopped into our lovely tractor, attached the flatbed trailer, loaded in all the eggs first. That sold for just $4,567. All the vegetables sold for another $13,338. But we got some urgent stuff we need to buy. First, spent $1,350 on a nice little fertilizer sprayer. Bought 2 barrels of herbicide for $600. And bought 20 bags of chicken feed for $1,500. Immediately fed it all to the chickens, which will hopefully last us till the next harvest. We should plant something in this field we have made before, but we need a planter to do so. I spent $2,750 on a simple 2-row planter, attached the new planter, filled up with some seeds, and started planting the whole field with corn. After it grows up, we will have an option to either make silage from it and grow some cows or use it as a feed for some pigs. It took a couple of hours to plant it all, but we had no time to rest. I drove back to the yard and parked the planter, attached the sprayer next, loaded it full of herbicide, and began spraying the wheat fields. But when I came back to the yard, I noticed something. The tractor is all covered in dirt and dust, so I spent $4,300 on a washing station, washed off the tractor, parked the sprayer inside the shed. The only thing we have left to do for today is taking care of all the grass, but we need a mower to do so. I opened up the catalog and spent $2,000 on a mower designed specifically for our tractor, attached it, and began cutting all the grass around the farm. We have spent almost 2 years on these lands, starting from an empty ocean, with just a fishing rod, where now we have a bunch of crops growing, chickens chirping around. If you like what you saw in the video, leave a like, subscribe, and leave any suggestions you got in the comments down below.